Jesus' birth and death are arguably the two best-known events from his life on this earth. I mean, to this day, the great majority of the world celebrates and remembers precisely these two events at Christmas and Easter. So definitely well-known events. What is not so well-known, however, is that there are quite a number of parallels between these two events, and the obvious question is, why? Why is the birth of Jesus so similar to his death? Let's take a look. Welcome to Masterpiece. My name is Chris, and in this video, I want to share with you 10 fascinating parallels between the birth and death of Jesus, and then I want to talk about what the significance of that connection is. So, let's get started. Parallel number 1, Mary's and Joseph are present. So we all know that Jesus' parents were called Mary and Joseph, and that they were present at his birth. Both Matthew and Luke tell us that in their Gospels. Now, the fascinating thing that a lot of people don't realize is that this exact combination of names reappears at his death. For one thing, John tells us in his Gospel that Jesus' mother, Mary, was at the cross. And he and the other Gospel writers also mention several other Marys who were at the cross and at the tomb. Now, there's no mention of Jesus' father at the cross, but all four Gospels talk about a man named Joseph of Arimathea, a rich man who was a disciple of Jesus, who got permission to take down Jesus' body from the cross and then buried him in his own tomb. So, Mary and Joseph at birth, Mary's and Joseph at death. Parallel number 2, Jesus is wrapped and laid. So according to Luke 2 verse 7, when Jesus was born, his mother Mary wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. Interestingly, those same two actions reappear at his death. In Luke 23:53, it says that Joseph took down the body and then he wrapped it in linen and laid it in a tomb that was hewn out of the rock. Parallel number 3, an angel of the Lord appears. So you remember, when Mary was pregnant with Jesus, she was engaged but not yet married to Joseph, and Matthew tells us that Joseph wanted to divorce her, but an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and told him that he shouldn't be afraid to take Mary as his wife. And then later, the angel appeared 2 more times, first to tell him to flee to Egypt with Jesus and Mary, and then to return to Israel. And according to Luke 2 verse 9, an angel of the Lord also appeared to the shepherds. And then, of course, when Jesus was in the tomb, an angel of the Lord appeared and rolled the stone away. Parallel number 4, Jesus is called the King of the Jews. So after Jesus was born, Matthew tells us that wise men came from the east to Jerusalem, and what did they look for? The King of the Jews. And this exact title reappears during Jesus' trial and crucifixion. When Jesus was brought before Pilate, Pilate asks him, "Are you the King of the Jews?" And the soldiers mock him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And when he's on the cross, there's an inscription over his head that says, "The King of the Jews." Parallel number 5, myrrh is mentioned. So in Matthew 2, the wise men come to Jesus, and it says that they offered him gifts. And one of those gifts was myrrh. And in John 19:39, it says that Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes for Jesus' burial. Parallel number 6, there is darkness. Luke 2 verse 8 says that when Jesus was born, there were shepherds in the field who were keeping watch over their flock at night. And it may also very well have been dark when the wise men saw the star that led them to Jesus. And when it comes to Jesus' death, Matthew, Mark, and Luke all tell us that there was a darkness during the crucifixion from the 6th to the 9th hour. Parallel number 7, a king named Herod shows superficial interest in Jesus. According to Matthew chapter 2, when Jesus was born, there was a king named Herod who met with the wise men and sent them to Bethlehem to inquire about Jesus and bring back word to him. And according to Luke 23, during his trial, Jesus was sent to another king named Herod, who was glad when he saw him because he long desired to see him. Parallel number 8, Jesus is supposed to die. When Herod realized that the wise men weren't coming back to give him more information about Jesus, he got very angry, and he decided to kill Jesus by killing all the male children in Bethlehem and the whole region who were 2 years old or under. Now, of course, he wasn't successful, unlike the Jews many years later who actually got Jesus crucified. Parallel number 9, the chief priests and scribes play a significant role. When Herod hears about the birth of Jesus, Matthew tells us that he assembled all the chief priests and scribes and inquired of them where Jesus was to be born. And of course, these two groups of people, chief priests and scribes, also play a crucial role during Jesus' trial and crucifixion. And parallel number 10, Jesus is worshipped. When the wise men finally found Jesus, it says that when they saw him, they fell down and worshipped him. And the same thing is said of the soldiers who knelt down and worshipped him during his trial, even though they were, of course, doing it to mock him and not genuinely like the wise men. Isn't that fascinating? It's almost as if the birth of Jesus foreshadowed his death. And I'm sure there's even more parallels, and if you see any more, let me know in the comments. But the obvious question is, why these connections? What's the point? So there's probably a lot that could be said about this, and to be honest with you, I'm still in the process of thinking about the full significance of this, but I do want to mention just a couple of things, and the first is that these parallels provide a kind of frame around the story of Jesus. And that's something you often encounter in written works, whether it be books or articles or screenplays for movies. Maybe you've already noticed that. The author will begin a certain way, with a certain thought or a certain story, and then he or she will return to that thought or story at the end of the text, and it provides a sense of closure or completeness. And I think the gospel writers are doing something similar. But of course, they're not just doing it to produce a well-written text, but in order to communicate something. And one of those things seems to be that everything in the life of Jesus is foreshadowing or pointing forward to his death and resurrection, even his birth. Because the reason Jesus came to this earth was to suffer and die. And already his birth is pointing forward to that. He was born to die. So the parallels really highlight the importance and centrality of his sacrifice for our sin. But at the same time, the connection between his birth and death also provides hope, because his miraculous birth suggests that he will not remain in the tomb, that death will not have the last word, but that he will be resurrected or reborn in a miraculous way, and that people will once again rejoice just like they did at his birth. And that's exactly what happened. So like I just said, I'm sure there's a lot more that could be said about this. And if you have some additional thoughts on this, let me know in the comments. And if you want to see how the well-known story of Daniel in the lions den also foreshadows Jesus' death and resurrection, then go watch this video next, and I'll see you there.